Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV, and we're lifelong Catholics, and what we do is all for free, and for our love of Jesus Christ, and for our Holy Mother, the Church, and we'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. So we're getting back to the topic we started on our show regarding religious freedom victory for in the Supreme Court. Carson versus making a decision about Maine. And we're going to talk now about Catholic high schools with Brother Alexis.
Well, thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio TV. It's always a pleasure. And this is a topic close to my heart because both my parents are educators, and my mother especially was a school teacher she started teaching, I think, in '54, and she taught until like 2014. So that's 60 years she was teaching. That's, I think, 60 years. She loved children, and education has always been big in our family. Even after we all were in public schools, we have our own programs of self-education, which aren't really structured, but mostly curiosity. So we're very sensitive to the issue that a good education is what makes the character of a man and a woman. And without it, you're really handicapped. You don't even know what you're missing in life. And you have a hard time understanding the world.
Mm-hmm. So today's Catholic education is nothing what we think of it as it should be.
Yeah, so if you have sent your kids to parochial school or Catholic high schools, then you have a real experience of what's going on. The problems that haven't begun recently was Fulton Sheen in the 50s said, if you want your kids to grow up Catholic, do not send them to a Catholic school. He said that when Catholic schools were still good. And Catholic education in the United States is one of the biggest systems of religious schools, and it really achieved a lot more than any system of Catholic education in other countries of the world. So it's not like we can put the Catholic Church in the United States down for its system of schools, most of whom was founded by religious sisters, brothers, but even diocesan priests and bishops. So we have had at least a tremendous institution of education for children. But it's not enough to have a building. You need a good curriculum and you need sound teachers. And if you're lacking those three things, then it's going to have problems or it's just not going to work out. So today we can't talk about having buildings. Our order doesn't have money to have buildings, and we're not promoting any particular project. And we're not talking about the personnel. So we're going to just talk about the curriculum. What would the ideal Catholic school be? And from our thinkers' point of view, our AJ and I's point of view, our dreams, and some contributions we've had from supporters.
Yeah.
If you have a high ideal, it's something to shoot for. The Supreme Court ruling means we should start founding Catholic high schools, Catholic parochial middle schools. We should rebuild America. We shouldn't give up. It's not the time to cede ground. And so let's shed some light on that.
Yeah. So yeah, we're not going to be talking about everything, but just the curriculum and doing the research on this. I think we came up with a very great one. It's something that I don't think many Catholic schools teach. It's your basic ones: English, algebra, calculus. Then we have trigonometry, geometry, and geography.
And all these topics can be taught from a Catholic point of view. And this is something that's the most important thing. In a Catholic high school, everyone should be taught to understand, recognize, and that we are midgets on the shoulders of giants. The Catholic Church has given birth to Western civilization. And in all these arguments, there are notable Catholics who led the way. And Catholic education is not the same as classical education. This is what I want to point out. This is one of the big errors of the Renaissance, to revive pagan classic education and to abandon the whole sense of Catholic education. And this is where the Jesuit order has led us astray, and has taught our generation after generation become more and more pagan until we're in just complete apostasy today.
Yeah.
So
Then we have for sciences, astronomy, chemistry, meteorology, and weather.
and it's important to give a little about each of these basic sciences, so you know what's going on in the world. And just to name them, I remember in my high school, we had a little bit on meteorology, but especially in the United States, we have one of the most complex weather systems in the world. People should learn something about it. It can save your life in the United States. It's very important. And but each of these topics can be taught in a way that opens the mind to the learning of the science, but also the wonderment on the world God has made, and without all the matrix of scientism. So a Catholic high school can really teach these things really well if it wants to be a school of excellence.
Yeah. Then something not taught in public schools today or Catholic schools today: situational and geographical awareness, which is
So
land surveying, map making, and how to read a map.
yeah, so this was almost never taught when I was in school, but since all kids today pretty much have a cell phone in their hand that has a map on it, reading a map is important. And it's a lot more important because no one's asking each other directions anymore. And people get incredibly lost because they can't even read the map. So, but this is especially important in the United States because we are a culture that travels. Some people have to travel 4 hours to work. People are traveling on different times of the year to one part of the country or another. They drive long hours in cars. And you can't get the road maps at the stops anymore. You have to rely on that stupid Google map. And you shouldn't rely on it that much because it will take you down the same street as everyone else using that app, and you're involved in all the traffic jams. And so learning to navigate is something you should learn to do without your cell phone and be able to do it, because you may not always have your cell phone. Especially now with the introduction of 5G, you have companies like AT&T that's going to end all cell phone coverage to the countryside. So how are you going to navigate? So these are just some of the problems that are upcoming in technology, the problems in modern world that our forefathers didn't have. But
yeah. So yeah, we're going to ditch the normal American history and world history textbooks and give your sons and daughters books by Dr. Anthony Sutton.
yeah, so in every subject, especially in history, a Catholic high school really has to approach it in a different way. And we have to approach it from the point of view of Western, not just Western civilization, but Catholic civilization. And the children the students in high school need to know the fathers of the church.
Mm-hmm.
They need to know all the great scientists that were Catholics, that modern science comes from Catholics. They need to know the history of Europe is a history created by Catholics, kings, princes, and popes, and that there was no Dark Ages. That's propaganda. And the Renaissance wasn't really a Renaissance. And the Age of Luminism wasn't really enlightenment. They need to know the dangers in the world. Where did Freemasonry come from? Where does the Illuminati come from? Who are the enemies of the church, and how are these long battles? The origins of Marxism, how the Masonic Lodge really controls Western civilization now, and how we are truly dominated, and why the political parties are coercing us, inducing us, and seducing us to destroy the church from within and without. a Catholic high school should impart to the student a knowledge so that when he leaves, he's not going to be manipulated by any of these people. And Sutton is a great author. He wasn't Catholic. I think he was Anglican. But this is the true story you need to hear. You don't hear any of the propaganda gook that's coming out. Now, we're not saying a Catholic high school should be anti-American or anti-patriotic, quite the contrary. But true patriotism is love of your country for Christ's sake, not acceptance of Masonic propaganda to become a cog in their system.
Yeah. And we're going to teach them real military history, stuff that we weren't taught about World War II or World War One, and like what we were talking about on Twitter DM about the British sinking the French fleet in Algiers and near Lebanon and stuff.
Yeah, so we need to understand that even in just wars, errors can be made. And a good history course is going to cover the good and the bad. What really happened. Unfortunately, I think, in my high school, they didn't even get to Second World War. Oh, we don't have enough time, they said. And enough of these shallow history books that don't teach anything,
Mm-hmm.
And a critical understanding history, not from a Marxist point of view, but from a Catholic point of view.
Yeah.
And to instill in the student a love for his country, but an understanding that it's not a dreamland, that there are problems out there. So he's prepared to confront them and avoid the problems.
Yeah.
Not become a victim, like so many of us have been on the propaganda fed to us for generations.
Yeah. And we're going to also teach them real Catholic military history, if that means having them watch that awesome Crusade YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't know about the Crusades, they don't know about the Papal States, they don't know about the great Catholic heroes like Louis IX, or they don't know that there were devout Catholics in history. Did you know that George Washington is a descendant of someone who attended the Third Crusade? Did you know that? So instead of poo-pooing the Catholics or ignoring us, actually most American history classes completely ignore the existence of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. So that you have no sensibility. But you teach history correctly, then when you grow up, you understand the importance of that Catholic Church downtown. Well, that Catholic Church downtown is more important than the Methodist Church, the Episcopalian Church, and the Congregational Church, because that Catholic Church represents civilization. Mm-hmm. And those were all created by men to tear civilization down. Yeah. And that's not to make us hostile or inimical to other groups that are in the United States, but we need to know who we are, who we mm-hmm. were, so we know who we should be.
Yeah. And we might have to teach them a few languages just to read some books, but especially we have to teach them Italian to get them to understand fully this awesome book that we started to cover on Ordo Militaris Radio TV, Just War by Giovanni De Legano.
Okay, so yeah, Catholic high school should teach the major languages of Europe, in addition to Latin and Greek, so not everything has to be obligatory. It gives the students some varieties, but mm-hmm. The United States, we basically just speak English, and some regions are speaking Spanish, but there's a lot more to the world than that. And our English language is really a composition of Germanic, French, and Latin. So if students aren't taught that, they're not going to understand how to use their own language. And this is what makes even the courses on English have to be open to that. Like etymology, most high schools will not teach you the etymology of English words. They will not even teach you the structure of English grammar. And you're only going to learn that when you start picking up another language like Latin or French or Italian that makes you exposed to a different way of speaking and therefore gets you to think about it. And students have been taught to think, not regurgitate. That's one of the biggest errors of modern education. Just memorize, regurgitate. No, it should be thinking and reading and writing, I've seen this. I've been in Italy several years, and Italians are incapable of writing anything because their entire education system is you answer an oral exam. They can't write a paragraph. They can't even read a paragraph. They say of English-speaking books, you English speakers write like Cicero with these sentences that go on for 2 pages. I mean, these paragraphs that go on for 2 pages. It's like, what are you doing in your language? Because our language is based on thought, but not every English speaker is taught that way. And I learned my English best when I began reading Cicero in high school. And this is not just a vain art. You know, well, who are you going to use Latin for anymore? Latin is the foundation of the liturgy of the Roman Rite. And if you're Catholic, how can you not know that? Or how would you want to be ignorant of it? But the great minds are the ones you need to study the writings of if you yourself want to become intelligent. This is a foundation of intelligence. You look at history, like even in modern history, all the great speech writers of the presidents, a good number of them, or nearly all of them, had a classical education, and many of them were Catholics. And oratory is not taught anymore, and oratory is very important. Communicating to one another and not just, you know, experiencing. And the Catholic high school should be a place of great academic excellence. And we shouldn't be afraid of that or think that, you know, my Johnny's not able of that. Everyone is much more able than you realize, but they need a curriculum that's going to expose them to the wonderful depth of Catholic civilization and challenge them to participate in that by learning and studying about it.
Yeah. And our library will be totally different. Explain why.
Well, so most American high schools have a library organized by the Dewey Decimal System. And Dewey was a Mason. He was also a pedophile. And his system excluded reality. You can't, I remember going to my high school library when I was sophomore, and I said, do you have any books on Catholic saints like Joan of Arc? Oh no, I said, in your history section, do you have a section for saints? Oh, there's no section for saints. I said, how about a section for famous generals? Oh, there's no section for that. I said, well, what do you mean there's no section? If someone donated a book on Joan of Arc, what would happen to it? Well, we can't classify it in the Dewey Decimal System, so we throw it away. And this is what goes on. This is why, unless you have a Catholic library in your school, your students have blinders put on them by the Masonic Lodge. And this is true about every subject. You're taught, for example, in science that Galileo was right and the church was in error and he was unjustly punished. But that's not what happened. Galileo was teaching that people lived on Jupiter, and the church said, no, that's a stupid idea. People do not live on Jupiter. The pictures you have, the sketches you have of Jupiter through your little telescope doesn't prove that anyone lives there. And the church was right. People don't live on Jupiter. You don't hear that in your schools. And you don't hear that, well, Galileo insulted the Pope, and he had a personal argument with the Pope, had nothing to do with his astronomy, because Copernicus, years before Galileo, I think it was like 70 years before, taught the same things, and he was praised by the church, and he was awarded even by the Pope for suggesting that the earth moves around the sun and not the sun around the earth. So, you know, the whole myth of Galileo, which is used as a to destroy children's faith and trust in Christ and his church in high school, is early on. Not to mention public schools are teaching sodomy, abortion, drug taking, tattooing, and every kind of secular thing. I mean, they don't even teach them good music. And to know that the foundations, all these originators, great thinkers, great musicians, great artists, great poets, great writers, great scientists, they were all Catholic, and that they did was for the love of God. That has a great impression on young people when they know the truth of that. Then they're proud to go out in the world and say, oh, I'm a Catholic. And you're not going to tell me how to live, how to think, or what's right and wrong. We're going to tell you, because we are the founders and the torchbearers of civilization, and you are the enemies of the light. And that's the mentality that should be taught in a Catholic school. So a good Catholic high school is not for the Catholics that want to, you know, disappear, fade away, and just, they're not for Nancy Pelosi Catholics. We want Catholic schools that Mother Cabrini would be proud of, or Elizabeth Ann Seton. would be proud of. And unless we have them, the next generation is not going to be prepared. And we know that we weren't prepared enough for our own battles. So if we have any love for the next generation, we're going to found Catholic schools to give the next generation this kind of preparation.
Yeah. We also thought about, wood shop, metalworking, all the car shop, and all these different where these kids can learn these different skills.
Yeah, this is absolutely essential. One of the things that we've lost in my generation, and I'm like a generation ahead of you, AJ, is our dads. I was like the last generation where your dad might have taught you to do these things, and you had time enough to be with him to learn them. Young people are all playing video games. They know how to fix their PlayStation, but they don't know how to fix the car, the toilet, or the lawnmower. And mow the lawn. No, Dad, I'm playing, this fighter game. I can't mow the lawn right now. I'm in the midst of a battle, So a school needs to get kids back to nature, reality, and to mechanics. And the girls also need to know how to cook, how to sew, how to do all these things. These are the skills for life. And these are the skills you're going to need these skills more than knowing how to do the integral of 4x y squared. Okay. And if you're going to teach calculus, you should at least teach what in my generation called home economics. But the girls study the girl things, and the boys should study the boy things. And that guarantees marriages in the future because they have a complementarity of knowledge that they both need one another. And that's the real hallmark of a Catholic education. So all those practical courses are great things because many dads don't know those things anymore, so they don't teach them to their sons.
Yeah. And then we have a few advanced class deals of engineering and maybe some basic medicine.
Yeah, and a lot of things like nutrition. Nutrition is not taught. It's one of the most important things, and the practice of chastity, the life of virtue, and let's not omit the Catholic Catechism of the Council of Trent. And children need to be formed to understand the faith and be able to ask questions. Why is the church opposed to abortion? What is the history of the church's teaching from the Didache in 70 AD all the way up to modern times? And when they see that, Catholics have always believed these things. And these are all the falsehoods and the arguments against it. Now, these things need to be taught. It would be great to have a course on Catholic controversy, where students are study why the church is opposed to sodomy, abortion, cohabitation, drug taking. So, and once you understand the history behind it and what's Marxism critique and what are they attempting with these things, students need to be taught this so they're not manipulated. And why getting drunk isn't a way of entertaining yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a school should also teach the students, for example, to drive. It's a basic skill. Ride a bicycle and swim. These are basic skills of life, and everyone should know them. Who's going to teach them? In the olden days, you learned from someone, a friend or someone in town, your grandfather. We don't have the extended families around us anymore, so a school should be teaching these things. And that spices up the school too, because it's all just, mathematics and Latin and Greek. Some students are going to like, but if you have some of these practical things mixed in, it keeps the kids awake,
And every once in a while, you would see memes on Twitter and Facebook where nuns are carrying shotguns. Or our schools used to teach them how to shoot and everything. We would do that and maybe train the kids with about horses and horseback riding and other things.
If a school's in the countryside, you could do a lot of things. So Catholic schools can really have a great impact on the United States if a new generation, ours that have been through the battles and survived, decides to pass on our knowledge by founding Catholic high schools, which are independent of the diocese and the parishes, but nevertheless constituted by good lay people, religious priests that work together and make use of this newfound freedom that in many states we're going to be able to get funding for our Catholic school, the same as in public schools, whether it's 8, 10, or 12,000 a student. So parents at last can send their kids to a Catholic high school and not be worried about going broke to do it. And this is going to change, this is going to transform the face of America. But it's going to be the duty of our generation, people age of AJ and I and thereabouts. We need to dedicate ourselves to it. And we're doing this little program so that any of our listeners out there might catch the fire and start a Catholic. Because all it takes is one of you with a determined in the mind, I want to found a Catholic high school in my county. And stick with it and don't give it up, and you will succeed and you will start it and you will found it and it will be great. But this is our Lord's given to us on a platter now. We're the first generation in 150 years in the United States that has it on the platter. So we got to take it and run with it. And if you're not in a state where you get the funding, move to the state where you're funding if you have the zeal to found one of these schools. Because we can't waste time. And found a boarding school so Catholic parents can send their kids from anywhere in the country.
And on the show page, you'll find a booklet that I and an Army veteran and a Marine veteran helped put together. And hello to our supporters of the United States Marines in San Diego who love this booklet.
Okay. AJ has a dream of starting a Catholic military high school. And so, but there's all kinds of Catholic high schools. You could find one that's dedicated to the arts or to the music or to academics or so that's one of the beauties I see in Europe. They have high schools that are differentiated according to what they do. But it depends on the population, the area, and the specialty. But every school could specialize, you know. And but we have a duty to the United States. We are the torchbearers of civilization, we Catholics. And if you're a Catholic educator and you're retired and you know what we're talking about, now's the time. Don't think about retiring. Think about starting a new war, a new crusade, and something that will touch thousands and thousands. And each of the students graduating from these schools will touch thousands and thousands. They will be the next generation of our American leaders, our American generals, the businessmen of our country, and they'll make America a lot better than it is. Save it from the destructive path it's on.
So again, please like, share this program. Do everything you can to get around the algorithms that are hiding our programs on YouTube. And I'll also be tweeting out the links from the Odyssey where it'll upload there directly from YouTube. And thank you to those who have watched our programs in Odyssey. I mean, getting 50 to 100 views a day is like.
And I'll make one recommendation. If you're seeing this video and you're really sparked with interest, leave a comment and say, I'm in such and such a state. Does anyone else want to found a Catholic high school in my state? Let's start conversations like that and get the ball rolling. Maybe it won't lead to anything, but maybe it'd be that necessary spark to get things going. And AJ will let those comments go on all the channels he puts out there. So you come to Ordo Militaris radio TV site and you'll see links. And AJ, if you put links to all the other channel programs there, then they can go back and forth ones and talk to different people.
Yep. So I'll do that, and I look forward to seeing your comments. This is Ordo Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.